I have always categorized strength to physical. How much can I lift? How long can I last on a certain amount of reps? While I no longer think the same, I think similarly, and have interpreted strength through another character, Shigeo Kageyama. Shigeo, otherwise known as Mob, is the quintessential definition of someone without purpose, at least at first. As I continued to watch him grow, overcome his fears and weaknesses, I grew with Mob, learned from him. He thought he had a power which limited him, forced him to hide his emotions. In a way, he was right, and yet he was wrong. Those emotions that come full to bursting like a disaster are those very same emotions that gave him his final lesson. It's not enough to change, but to accept. Those parts of himself, the parts that he had always rejected, are him as well. It's not bad to feel. It's good to. It's even better to let yourself realize that as long as you live, you will experience things that feel like they're driving you insane. That's what it means to be human. And to be strong means taking on those challenges and never backing down. Shigeru was afraid to show his true self because he interpreted that through his powers. Once he started to open up, though, some beat him down, but those who mattered didn't. The right ones didn't. I'll come back around to Shigeo, but for now I'll focus on two characters, Sukuna and Gojo, two sides of the same coin. Neither is righteous or discriminate in how they pass judgment to us nobodies. They only differ in their upbringing and how they actually interpret, I bet I was a creepy kid. Don't look at me, small fry. Though these words may not mean much, let me tell you why I can take these words to heart and bring forward a conclusion about what I think about their characters. One was tossed aside, and one was coveted by all. Satoru Gojo was born to turn the tables. His very awakening broke a lasting chain of fate that had held for 3,000 years, maybe longer, but in a way he always felt alone. His own best friend turned against him, because even after becoming the enlightened one by his own words, he couldn't see before him the very person who was asking for help. He distanced himself, and that led to Suguru's downfall. But that downfall, in a way, is beautiful to me. Many may say that Gojo went down the right path, and it was, but ultimately it also led to his demise. Why is that? Why is it that Suguru, despite all of his strength, had genuine friends, a family, and yet Gojo had none but him? One cannot be saved unless they want to be. Gojo says this, and yet he himself asked for companionship while not trying to act like a companion. He wants respect without giving any, to earn popularity despite being extremely socially inept. He never learns to actually connect with people. Jokes aside, when Gojo bothers Utahime, that is in itself the first flaw that he refuses to change about himself. He belittles Utahime and speaks only of strength and not character. He lives in a world where he is sure his way of thinking is correct. To have someone who understands, they must be as strong as me in terms of power. And I don't mean that he thinks that Utahime is completely useless. She's not. Her technique is very useful. But he does like to belittle her in terms of power in comparison to himself. So let's turn to Geto. Why is he surrounded by a family? Why do his allies stay loyal despite him, well, being gone now and honestly trying to fight to the death for him to beat the brain that had taken over his body? It's because he never spoke of his power, but instead of unification, to create a world where none are discriminated against for being strong. So perhaps his friend as well could find a place that he can belong. We don't know if he has Satoru in mind, but I'm willing to bet that it came up to him. Satoru wants a world where no one is alone, but what does that mean exactly? I want someone who gets it, the pain of being the strongest. Gojo wanted allies by his side, but it was never going to happen. He never connected that deeply. Of course, those around him owe him a lot. Some do respect him, but they're less friends and more like colleagues or students and teachers. Sukuna is none of and had none of these things. He lives in a world of nihilism, hedonism, and slaughter. Act on my impulses until I die. If I'm gonna die, I'll do so living like a king. He does not ask for respect, he commands it. Kenjaku wasn't nervous while trying to seal Gojo because he knew of his one weakness, his humanity. Sukuna has no such thing, which is why he told Kashimo that he believes Sukuna is the strongest. And there's not much to say about Sukuna. He is who he says he is. He's a horrible person. He doesn't care about fighting honorably. He never said that he would. And in the eyes of others, he is a villain. And yet, when he wanted their support, they looked at him as if he were trash. Most likely, anyway. So what road does one take when no one expects anything of them and they don't care about their existence? They carve themselves a new path, one of pain, misery, or carnage. Maybe all three. Sukuna has gone down on all these three paths, and he has to show for it strength, and that's it. The rest is hollow. He exists to exist, but has no purpose. He fights to win, but not for satisfaction. Simply just because he's not really getting anything out of it. If he dies, he dies. He has nothing to take with him, nothing to leave behind. I assume that when he came to the future, it was to find meaning, but in a new world where you cannot be accepted, there's no meaning to be found. He is Ryuman Sukuna, and as much as he kills, as much as he tries to find purpose, he never will. He is his own curse. Shigeo looked at both these paths through two lenses in his own world, that of Dimple and the final antagonist of Season 3. If I'm not wrong, that's Suzuki. Dimple wanted to become God, but there'd be no purpose without someone to share with. Suzuki searched for strength to fill the hole in his heart, but again, after his plan was done, what would have been the point? Dimple parallels Gojo, and the latter parallels Sukuna. Their ambitions are simply more spelled out for us. Shigeo made a friend of Dimple and a learning father out of Suzuki. That is true strength. To sway others with your way of thinking, not with oppression. One cannot learn to change their habits through brutal beatings. Actions speak louder than words, yes, but Shigeo told Dimple that he was his friend, so he didn't fight him. He told Suzuki that he believed that they had better potential they could nurture than being a dictator, so he stayed with them at the risk of dying. That is why Suzuki turned to a new leaf. He was shown through conviction, not violence. What's my point here? I think it's pretty clear by now, but both the ideals of Sukuna and Gojo are wrong. It also relates to those who love to shout the word fraud at the slightest show of humanity or a loss. Being vulnerable or willing to take a hit to win later, or willing to just analyze your opponent so you can eventually win the battle, doesn't mean that one doesn't have validity in their strength or their character. Yuta never once proclaimed himself as exceptional. Everyone else always has. They've always done that. Yuji did want to be the strongest, and by my definition, he is slowly reaching that goal. Because Yuji never ever stops. He's always moving. No matter how many times he gets hit down, he always gets back up, and does so always surrounded by someone who lends him a hand. Because he draws people in that way. Todo, Choso, now Higuruma. Even if he carries their burdens and their curses now, Sukuna will get nothing from beating Yuji or belittling him. But what does Yuji get? Something far more concrete, I would like to think. I think that all his actions have a purpose. It's to end this whole propping of endless, arrogant and egoistical thinking. Why am I alone? What is the point of strength? Who is the true honored one? It sounds so cringe. They all have no conviction. They had no conviction to deal with their actual humanity. It takes far more strength to actually learn to live with yourself than to just kill everyone you consider weaker than you for self-affirmation. Kashimo never tried to understand those around him and wound up alone with his useless strength. Uro was someone who came to the presence to get revenge by becoming somebody. But somebody to who? And in the eyes of others, had she achieved her goal, she would have just been another psycho. You're not somebody. You're nobody who wants to be someone through violence. And that in itself is weakness, because you don't have any other way to show your strength than to brutally massacre everyone you consider weaker than you. That is my analysis and my viewpoint on this whole fraudulent activity, whatever the heck it is people keep talking about on the internet, and whoever is the true honored one, who's the strongest. But this is just my take. I hope you liked it, and like and subscribe, and I will see you in the next video. Goodbye.